The desperate arrangement. Rohan Malhotra stared at the hospital ceiling, counting the water stains while the doctor's words echoed in his mind. 3 months, maybe less. His grandmother, Leela, the woman who had raised him since he was 8, was dying of congestive heart failure. The only family he had left would soon be gone. "Beta, before I go, I just want to see you settled," grandmother Leela had whispered earlier that day, her frail hand squeezing his with surprising strength. "To know you won't be alone." Rohan knew what she meant. For years, she had hoped to see him married, to attend his wedding, to know he had found someone to share his life with. But at 32, Rohan had built walls around himself as meticulously as the buildings he designed. His architecture firm consumed every waking hour, leaving no room for romance. The autumn rain pelted against the window as Rohan left the hospital, his mind racing. He couldn't bear the thought of disappointing his grandmother in her final months. The idea came to him suddenly, absurd yet somehow perfect in its simplicity: a temporary bride. Priya Sharma arranged white lilies in a crystal vase, humming softly as the bell above her flower shop door chimed. She looked up to see a tall man, with rain-soaked hair and tired eyes. She recognized him vaguely, the architect whose office was down the street, who sometimes ordered arrangements for clients but never smiled. "Can I help you?" she asked, wiping her hands on her apron. "I need a wife," Rohan blurted out, then winced. "I mean, that came out wrong." Priya's eyebrows shot up. "I sell flowers, not whatever you're looking for." "My grandmother is dying," he said, the words tumbling out. "Her last wish is to see me married. I don't have time to date, but I thought maybe an arrangement, just for a month." Priya stared at him, stunned. "You want me to pretend to be your wife? I'll pay you of course," Rohan said quickly. "And it would just be for appearances. We'd have separate rooms. You'd just need to visit the hospital with me, attend a few family gatherings." "You're serious?" Priya asked, studying his face. Rohan nodded, desperation evident in his eyes. "I know it's strange, but I can't bear for her to worry about me being alone when she's—" He couldn't finish the sentence. Priya thought of her own grandmother who had passed away 2 years ago, how she would have done anything to grant her final wishes. Still, this was madness. "Why me? You barely know me. You're kind to everyone who comes in here. My grandmother would like you," he said simply. "And you mentioned once that you live alone above the shop. I thought maybe you could use the money." Priya bristled at that. True, the flower shop barely kept her afloat and the leak in her apartment ceiling wasn't fixing itself. But still. "1 month," Rohan said. "That's all I'm asking. After that, we go our separate ways." Priya looked around her small shop, at the calendar marked with bill due dates, and thought of the lonely evening ahead. Then she thought of an old woman, clinging to life, wanting to see her grandson happy. "I must be crazy," she murmured, then looked him in the eye. 1 month, not a day more. Rohan's shoulders sagged with relief. "Thank you." Neither of them realized that the contract they were drafting, with its clear end date and professional boundaries, would soon be worth less than the paper it was written on. Reluctant beginnings. The morning Priya moved into Rohan's apartment was awkward at best. His modern penthouse, with its minimalist design and panoramic views of the city, felt cold and impersonal. All chrome, glass, and empty spaces. Much like the man himself, she thought. "Your room is through here," Rohan said, wheeling her suitcase down a hallway. "Bathroom is attached. I've cleared some closet space." Priya followed him, noting the absence of personal photographs or mementos. The guest room was tastefully decorated but had clearly never been used. "Thank you," she said, accepting the key he handed her. "So, how exactly does this work?" Rohan produced a folder. "I've prepared some notes about my life, my family, things you should know if we've been dating for a year and engaged for 3 months, which is our story." Priya flipped through the meticulously organized pages. "You've thought of everything. I'm an architect. Details matter." He checked his watch. "We're visiting my grandmother this afternoon. She's being moved from the hospital to hospice care. Priya nodded, suddenly feeling the weight of what she'd agreed to. She was about to meet a dying woman and lie to her face. Rohan, I need to ask, are you sure this is right? Lying to your grandmother? A shadow crossed his face. It's not ideal, but she's suffering enough without worrying about me. This will bring her peace. He hesitated. We should practice. Practice what? Being together. We can't look like strangers. He awkwardly reached for her hand and Priya almost laughed at how stiff he was. Relax your fingers, she instructed, and maybe don't look like you're in physical pain when you touch me. A ghost of a smile appeared on his face. Sorry, it's been a while. The hospice center was warm and bright with sunlight streaming through large windows. Grandmother Leela's room was filled with flowers, ironically many from Priya's own shop, though she'd never made the connection to Rohan before. Dottie, this is Priya, Rohan said softly, approaching the bed where a tiny woman with silver hair and bright eyes sat propped against pillows. Leela's face lit up. So she exists. I was beginning to think you made her up. She extended frail hands toward Priya. Come, let me see the girl who finally captured my grandson's heart. Priya stepped forward, her rehearsed introduction vanishing from memory as she took the older woman's hands. They were warm and paper-thin, but her grip was surprisingly strong. The florist, Leela said approvingly. No wonder my room always has the most beautiful arrangements. Rohan told me how you met when he ordered flowers for a client. Priya shot Rohan a surprised glance. He'd been a customer, but they'd never really spoken until his bizarre proposal. Yes, she recovered smoothly. He kept coming back for more arrangements. I thought he had a lot of clients, but eventually, I realized he just wanted to see me. Rohan looked uncomfortable, but Leela clapped her hands in delight. That sounds like my shy boy. Always the long route with him. She patted the bed beside her. Sit, tell me everything. Don't leave anything out. For the next hour, Priya wove a tapestry of half-truths and complete fabrications, drawing from the folder Rohan had prepared and improvising the rest. To her surprise, Rohan occasionally joined in, adding details she couldn't have known. And then she scolded me for ordering lilies when tulips would clearly be better for the client's taste, he said with more animation than Priya had ever seen from him. He finally listened, Priya added. Only took 3 attempts. Stubborn like his grandfather, Leela said fondly. Then her expression grew serious as she reached for both their hands. Promise me something. Take care of each other when I'm gone. Life is too short for work to be your only love, Rohan. Priya felt a lump in her throat. We will, she promised, feeling Rohan's hand tighten around hers. On the drive home, they were quiet. The weight of their deception hung between them. Your grandmother is lovely, Priya finally said. Yes, Rohan replied, eyes fixed on the road. Thank you for today. You were convincing. So were you, Priya said, surprised. I didn't know you paid that much attention when you came to the shop. Rohan's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. 29 more days, he said, almost to himself. And though it was exactly what they'd agreed upon, something about the countdown felt strangely hollow. Unexpected stirrings 2 weeks into their arrangement, something shifted. Priya couldn't pinpoint exactly when the atmosphere in Rohan's apartment began to change, but the sterile space had somehow become less empty. Her gardening books now occupied a corner of the living room shelf. Fresh flowers, leftovers from her shop, brightened the kitchen table. The scent of her cooking lingered in the air. Rohan, too, seemed to be thawing. She'd catch him watching her sometimes with an expression she couldn't quite read. You don't have to make dinner, he said one evening, finding her chopping vegetables. That wasn't part of our agreement, Priya shrugged. I like cooking. Besides, you can't live on takeout and protein shakes. I managed for years, he said, but accepted the spoon she offered, tasting the curry simmering on the stove. His eyes widened. That's incredible. My mother's recipe, she said. Family secret. Is she still No. Car accident when I was in college. My father followed a year later, heart attack. The doctors said grief can do that. Rohan was quiet for a moment. My parents died in a plane crash when I was 8. That's when I came to live with Dottie. Priya nodded, understanding. The shared language of loss. Is that why you work so much, to avoid getting close to people? His shoulders stiffened. I work because I'm good at it. Not everything needs psychoanalysis. Sorry, she murmured, turning back to the stove. After a moment, she felt him step closer. No, I'm sorry. You hit a nerve. He reached past her for plates. Let me set the table. They ate together, and for the first time, really talked. Not about the pretense or his grandmother, but about themselves. Rohan described the buildings he hoped to design someday, sustainable structures that worked with nature instead of against it. Priya shared her dream of expanding her shop to include a community garden. Why haven't you? He asked. Money, she admitted. The shop barely covers rent and supplies. He nodded thoughtfully but said nothing more. You've done this before, he observed during one of these glances. Prisha's brush paused mid-stroke. In another life. The weight of those 4 words hung in the air between them. Vihan recognized the tone, the same one he used when rare questions about his past arose. Sometimes other lives leave useful skills behind, he offered. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. Sometimes. As the evening progressed, they fell into a comfortable rhythm. Vihan constructed a delicate lattice for the fire escape scene, while Prisha transformed the mantle into a convincing antique, complete with the illusion of flickering embers. The director will be impressed, Vihan said as they cleaned brushes side by side at the utility sink. Prisha immediately stiffened. Please don't tell her it was me. I never said who painted the window either, he assured her, understanding her need for anonymity. Your work can be seen without you being seen. The tension in her shoulders eased slightly. Thank you. Over the next 3 weeks, their Tuesday ritual continued. Vihan would leave elements that needed Prisha's artistic touch and she would transform them, bringing life to his constructions. They spoke little, but the silence between them grew comfortable, occasionally punctuated by brief conversations about techniques or colors. During the 4th week, Vihan arrived to find Prisha, already there, studying his sketches for the dream sequence backdrop. I had an idea, she said, still looking at the drawings rather than at him. She hesitantly slid her sketchbook across the table. Vihan's eyes widened as he took in her concept, an architectural rendering of the set with structural modifications that would allow for layered scrims and floating elements. You're an architect, he said, not a question but a realization. Was, she corrected, her voice tightening. Vihan simply nodded, respecting the boundary. This is brilliant. But beyond my skills to build, I could show you, Prisha offered, then immediately looked surprised at her own words. That evening, they worked side by side, Prisha demonstrating the principles of load-bearing design modified for theatrical illusion. Vihan watched her hands as they moved confidently over the materials, noting how her voice grew stronger when discussing structural concepts. Why architecture? He asked during a break, keeping his tone casual. Prisha was quiet for so long he thought she wouldn't answer. I loved creating spaces that made people feel something, safe, inspired, connected. She twisted a piece of wire between her fingers. What about you? Why set design? Same reason, Vihan replied, but without having to explain my vision to others. His stutter emerged slightly on the word explain, and understanding flickered in Prisha's eyes. As they packed up that night, Layla unexpectedly poked her head into the workshop. Oh. Prisha, I didn't know you were still here, she said, looking between them with interest. The sets are coming along beautifully. Prisha's eyes immediately dropped to the floor, her body angling toward the exit. Just finishing up, Vihan intervened, deliberately allowing his stutter to show. The director's attention immediately shifted to him, giving Prisha a moment to compose herself. After Layla left, Prisha exhaled shakily. Does it ever get easier? Being seen? Vihan considered the question carefully. Not easier, but possible, with the right people. As they walked to the parking lot together for the first time, Prisha paused by her car. Next Tuesday I could bring the models for the floating elements. I'd like that, Vihan replied, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the spring evening. Driving home, he realized something had shifted between them. They were no longer just two shadows working in parallel. They had begun to create something together, borrowing courage from each other's presence. And for the first time in years, Vihan was looking forward to more than just the work. The spotlights. Edge the community theater buzzed with frantic energy 3 weeks before opening night. Prisha arrived for her usual evening shift to find the typically quiet backstage area filled with concerned voices. What's happening? She asked Vihan, who was staring at his phone with unusual intensity. Marco quit, he said, looking up with worry creasing his brow. Our technical director. Family emergency in Arizona. Prisha set down her bag. Over the past 2 months, their partnership had evolved beyond silent collaboration. She'd begun arriving earlier, staying later, gradually meeting other crew members as Vihan carefully facilitated these interactions, standing nearby like a protective shadow. That's terrible timing, she said, peering at the production schedule on the wall. All the lighting cues and set changes still need to be finalized. Director Layla burst through the door, her usual composed demeanor frayed at the edges. Vihan, please tell me you can take over tech direction. Vihan's face paled. Tech direction meant coordinating the entire backstage crew, communicating constantly with the booth operators and stage managers, speaking clearly and confidently under pressure. I can handle the design aspects, he began, his stutter becoming more pronounced with Layla's intense gaze upon him. But the key coordination. Prisha watched his discomfort grow as Layla continued pressing, explaining they had no budget to hire a replacement and no time to train someone new. The production, their most ambitious yet, meant to attract grant funding for the theater's community programs, was in jeopardy. I could help, Prisha heard herself say, the words escaping before she could reconsider. Both turned to look at her with surprise. Vihan and I could do it together, she continued, heart pounding. He knows the artistic vision and I have experience with project management and technical coordination. You do? Layla asked, hope brightening her features. Prisha nodded, avoiding details about her former leadership role at Meridian. We've been working together on the set elements. I understand the vision. Vihan's eyes met hers with a question. Are you sure? She gave a tiny nod. For him, for this space that had become her sanctuary, she could step partially into the light. It could work, Vihan said, his voice steadier. We could complement each other's skills. Layla looked between them, desperation overriding curiosity about Prisha's background. All right, but I need you both at tomorrow's full run-through to begin. Transition coordination. After she left, Vihan turned to Prisha. You don't have to do this. Neither do you, she replied. But I think we can, together. That night they stayed until midnight, reviewing technical notes and creating a shared system where Vihan could communicate design changes through sketches, while Prisha translated them to the crew. When words failed him, she would step in. When attention turned to her, he would redirect with a question about design elements. The next evening brought Prisha's first full-cast interaction, as she and Vihan sat in the theater during rehearsal, documenting every transition. Her pulse raced when Layla introduced them as the new technical team, but Vihan's steady presence beside her kept panic at bay. Just focus on the problems to solve, he whispered. Not the eyes watching. As the week progressed, they fell into a rhythm. Prisha created detailed flowcharts for scene transitions while Vihan refined the visual elements. During crew meetings, they developed a subtle choreography. He would begin explaining a concept, and when his stutter intensified under pressure, she would seamlessly continue his thought as if they shared one mind. The crew quickly adapted to their unusual co-direction style. No one questioned Prisha's reluctance to share personal details or Vihan's occasional communication struggles. Results were what mattered, and the production was coming together beautifully. 10 days before opening night, disaster struck again. During a critical scene transition rehearsal, the main backdrop, a complex cityscape crucial to the production, tore from its mounting, collapsing onto the stage. "It can't be repaired in time," the stage manager announced after inspection. "The structure is completely compromised." Cast members murmured worriedly while Layla paced the stage. "Without that backdrop, half our lighting design is useless. We'd need to reconceive everything." Prisha examined the damage, mind racing through architectural solutions. She pulled Vihan aside, speaking quietly. "Remember those structural models I showed you? The floating element concept? That would take too long to build conventionally," he whispered back. "Not if we use my original design approach," she said, sketching rapidly on her notepad. "A tension-based suspension system instead of traditional rigging." Vihan studied her drawing, eyes widening. "That could work, but we'd need to present the concept to Layla and the entire production team." Prisha's stomach clenched. This wasn't like their private collaborations or even the small crew meetings. This would mean standing center stage, explaining complex concepts to 20 people defending her ideas, being fully seen. "You could present it," she suggested weakly. Vihan took her hand, his touch gentle but grounding. "It's your design, Prisha, your brilliant solution. But I'll stand beside you." She looked around at the discouraged faces of cast members who had worked for months on this production, at the technical crew who had begun to trust her guidance, at Vihan, who faced his own fears daily yet never retreated. Drawing a deep breath, Prisha stepped forward. "Director Fernandez, we have an alternative solution to propose." Standing at the edge of the spotlight, Prisha began to explain her concept, voice trembling initially but growing stronger as she focused on the technical details rather than the eyes upon her. Vihan stood at her side, occasionally adding details, when her confidence wavered, their partnership visible to everyone. As understanding dawned on Layla's face, Prisha felt something shift inside her, not a complete transformation, but a crack in the wall she'd built around herself. She wasn't ready to stand in full light yet, but here at the spotlight's edge, with Vihan beside her, she found she could breathe more easily than expected. "Can you really make this work in 10 days? Layla asked when Prisha finished. Prisha looked at Vihan, who nodded with quiet confidence. "Yes," she said. "Together, we can." Center stage Heart's opening night arrived with a flurry of last-minute adjustments. Prisha moved through the backstage area with clipboard in hand, checking each element of their improvised backdrop system. The innovative tension-rigged design had come together in a miraculous 9 days of around-the-clock work, with the entire crew rallying behind their vision. "House opens in 30 minutes, the stage manager announced, sending a ripple of excitement through the backstage area. Vihan appeared at Prisha's side, looking uncharacteristically formal in dark slacks and a charcoal button-down. "Everything secure?" Prisha nodded, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Triple-checked. Your lighting adjustments look perfect." They had barely slept in days, transforming disaster into opportunity. The new backdrop system was more dynamic than the original, allowing scenes to transition with a fluidity that enhanced the play's dreamlike quality. Even Layla had been moved to tears during the final dress rehearsal. "I still can't believe we pulled this off," Prisha murmured, following Vihan to their small monitoring station in the wings. "I can," he replied simply. The certainty in his voice made her look up at him with surprise. Over the past 2 weeks, something had shifted between them. Crisis had forced them both beyond their carefully constructed boundaries. Vihan had spoken more, his stutter less pronounced when addressing their small team. Prisha had stepped forward, explaining technical aspects of the design to increasingly larger groups, drawing on professional skills she'd thought lost to her forever. "Places in 15, called the stage manager. The backstage area bustled with actors in costume, crew members with headsets, and the nervous energy that preceded any opening night. Prisha felt a familiar tightness in her chest. Not quite panic, but its close cousin. "Come with me," Vihan said suddenly, taking her hand. He led her through the back hallway and up a narrow staircase she hadn't noticed before. "Where are we going?" "We need to be at stations in 10 minutes, she protested. "Trust me." His hand remained firm around hers. They emerged onto the theater's roof, where the evening sky spread above them in watercolor strokes of indigo and deep purple. The spring air carried the scent of blooming magnolias from the park across the street. "I come here when it gets too much," Vihan explained, leading her to the edge where they could look down at the street below, to remember the bigger picture. Prisha took a deep breath, feeling her anxiety recede slightly. "It's beautiful." "Prisha," Vihan said, turning to face her. "Whatever happens tonight, success or disaster, I want you to know something." She met his gaze, surprised by the intensity she found there. "You never needed to hide," he continued. "Your brilliance, your vision, they deserve to be seen." "So do yours," she replied softly. "I've watched you struggle to express ideas I know are magnificent in your mind." Vihan smiled, a rare full smile that transformed his usually serious face. "Perhaps that's why we found each other. Two people hiding their light for different reasons." "Found each other," Prisha repeated, the phrase warming her from within. "I suppose we did." For a moment they stood in comfortable silence, the sounds of the arriving audience floating up from below. "When you left architecture," Vihan asked carefully, "what did you miss most?" Prisha considered the question, finding honesty easier in this private moment above the world. "The feeling that my ideas mattered, that I could create spaces that changed how people felt." "You've done that here," he said. "This theater feels different because of you." She smiled, realizing the truth in his words. In the past months, she had gradually reclaimed pieces of herself she thought lost forever, not in grand gestures but in small acts of creation and connection. "We should go back down," she said finally. "The show starts soon." Vihan nodded but didn't move. "After tonight, when this is all over, would you have dinner with me? Somewhere not hidden away?" The question hung between them, weighted with meaning. He wasn't just asking her to a meal, but to step fully into the light with him. Instead of the panic she expected, Prisha felt a surprising calm. "I'd like that." They descended to find organized chaos below, but now faced it together, with renewed purpose. Taking their positions in the wings, they exchanged a look of shared determination as the house lights dimmed. The performance unfolded beautifully. Each scene transition executed with precision, the innovative backdrop shifting like living architecture behind the actors. During the most complex change, when the tension system transformed the apartment scene into the dream sequence, Prisha held her breath. But the mechanism worked flawlessly, drawing audible gasps from the audience. When the final curtain fell, thunderous applause filled the theater. The cast took their bows, glowing with success. Then something unexpected happened. Layla walked onto the stage and gestured toward the wings. Our incredible technical directors, Vihan and Prisha, saved this production with their innovative design. Please join me in thanking them. Prisha froze as the stage manager gently nudged them forward. Panic flared briefly, but then Vihan's hand found hers, warm and steady. "Together?" he whispered. She nodded, feeling both terror and exhilaration. Together. They stepped onto the stage, blinking in the bright lights. The audience's applause washed over them like a wave. Prisha's heart hammered, but she remained standing, Vihan's presence anchoring her as they took a brief bow. Backstage once more, amid congratulations and celebration, Prisha realized something profound had changed. The fear hadn't disappeared, she still felt exposed, vulnerable, but it no longer controlled her. "You did it," Vihan said, eyes shining with pride. "You stood in the spotlight." "We did it," she corrected him. "I couldn't have without you." Later that night, after the cast party had wound down and the theater stood quiet and empty, they sat together on the edge of the stage, feet dangling over the orchestra pit. "What happens now?" Prisha asked, gazing out at the empty seats. Whatever we want, Vihan replied. The Community Arts Council was impressed. They're offering funding for more productions. I meant with us, she clarified, gathering courage to speak the thoughts that had been forming over their months together. Vihan turned to her, the stage's ghost light casting soft shadows across his face. I think we keep building something beautiful, together. I'm still broken in some ways, she admitted. The betrayal, the anxiety, they don't just disappear. So am I, he said, his hand finding hers in the dim light. But maybe we're not hiding anymore. Maybe we're just taking our time stepping into the light. Prisha leaned her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his breathing. They had found each other in the shadows, two creative souls seeking sanctuary from a world that had hurt them. But in their careful, patient collaboration, they had created more than beautiful sets. They had built a foundation of trust that allowed them both to be seen again. I'd like that, she whispered. Taking our time but moving forward. Above them, the innovative backdrop they'd created together caught the ghost light's glow, transforming the ordinary into something magical, much like the unexpected love that had grown between them. They sat in comfortable silence, two formerly, hidden hearts now center stage in each other's lives, no longer afraid of being seen for who they truly were. The theater around them stood as testimony to what they had built together, and a promise of what they might create in the future. Beauty, born from brokenness, light emerging from shadow, and love that gave courage to begin again.